Hey, welcome to the Rise48 Lunch and Learn. I'm Jason Kish, the Capital Formation Manager at Rise48. And today I have a very special guest who's here every time, Nick Stromwall. He's our Director of Capital Formation. And we're going to talk about 1031 exchanges today. So I'll have some questions here for Nick so that he can teach us a little bit more about what 1031 exchanges are, why they're used, and then how you can actually execute them. So, Nick, just right out of the gates, what is a 1031 exchange?
Yeah, great question. Glad to be here. The 1031 exchange is a process that an investor would go through to, in essence, defer paying taxes today by moving the taxable gain into a new property, a like kind exchange, thereby doing the main reason you do a 1031. That's to pay as little or no taxes as possible.
Okay, so you bought a property 15 years ago for $100,000, and now it's worth $400,000. You don't want to have to pay $300,000 in capital gains. That's a huge taxable event. So you're just taking that, rolling it into this new property. Am I understanding that
Yeah.
correctly?
Yeah, and basically you just need to find a like kind property. So something that's of the same value or more value than your original property.
Okay. So you're trying to delay these capital gains so that you don't have to pay this. Now, what kind of rules do you have to follow? You just have to sell the one property and then you have to buy another property and that's it?
Yeah, so basically it can be any type of physical asset, an actual property location where you can be on title of that particular property. It just has to be the same value or more, the new property that you identify. So let's say you had a single family home that went from 100 to 400,000. You could buy another single family home. You could buy a multifamily home. You could roll that into a syndication or a syndicated deal, or you could even change asset classes as long as it's a physical property that you can be on title.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, but there are some rules around like identifying the next property that you're going into. There are some timelines here. You actually need to stick your money with someone else in the meantime. What does that look like for a traditional 1031
Yeah,
exchange?
for a traditional 1031, when you go to sell the property, that starts a 45-day identification window clock where you need to identify a handful of properties, typically three or more properties that you might be able to move your proceeds into. Now, it doesn't have to be for sure properties that you're going to, you know, more than likely go ahead with. You just need to have identified. It's called the identification window, at least a handful, typically three or more potential properties in that 45-day window. After that 45-day window, you then have a chance of another 135 days to place that capital. So once you sell, you move the proceeds to a qualified intermediary. And we partner with several of those here at Rise 48. There's no right or wrong one to choose. You just need to have your money go to that qualified intermediary. And in that identification window, you present those three or more properties to your QI, and then you get to decide within sale of property to 180 days. You've got that 45-day identification window, and then additional 135 days to actually place it into an actual next property that's of equal value to what you sell it for or more than value.
Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you for that. So, now, what if you run into a scenario where you just want to sell this property? You want to get rid of this thing, or maybe somebody wants to develop land somewhere and they're going to take your property out, or they want to use your property and it's just exactly what they want or exactly where they want to do a project. They offer you a bunch of money, but you have no idea what you want to get into. What are some other options outside of a traditional 1031 if you don't want to execute on a traditional 1031 and follow that typical process?
Yeah, great option. So you sell your property in this current tax year. You're going to have to pay capital gains in for this year's taxes. So you have a couple options. You can either find a 1031 opportunity, or you can do something called a lazy 1031. And in essence, we're in the game of paying as little or no taxes as possible. And I would just preface this by saying, I'm not a tax professional. Your unique situation is going to determine what options you have or don't have. But in general, we're going to speak in principles here so that you can have a basic understanding, right? So if the goal is to pay as little taxes as possible, so let's go back to that 100K example. You buy a home for 100, it appreciates to 400, the difference 300K of capital gains exposure, right? So what are you going to do with that? Are you going to pay capital gains on that 300K? Are you going to find a 1031 opportunity to roll those proceeds into? Or, for a lot of people, a 1031 light or a 1031 easy might be an option for you, where you sell a property in this current year and you buy another property that has some depreciation in this current year, and you find a way to offset that 300K of capital gains exposure. So if an opportunity out there exists where you can get, let's say, roughly 50% bonus depreciation, you buy a property, or you enter into a syndicated deal, let's say at 600K, and you're going to see roughly 300K back. Now you've just offset that 300K of capital gains exposure from your 100 to 400K example, by entering into an investment opportunity that gives you depreciation, thereby in essence not doing a 1031 at all, or doing what some in the industry call a 1031 light or an easy 1031.
Okay, great. So how do you achieve that big first year, let's say 50%, like you brought up, depreciation? How does that actually work?
Yeah, so traditionally, if you have a personal residence or a commercial building, it's going to depreciate over a certain time horizon. It might be 27 years, it might be over 30 years, depending on your type of asset. So in a normal situation, you would take, let's just call it 1/30th of the value, and you'd have some depreciation, kind of some natural depreciation that happens. But inside of a given property, every type of material depreciates over a different schedule. Your carpet, the walls and studs, appliances, exterior roofs, they all have a different depreciation schedule. So, based on the big, beautiful bill that's currently in law right now, you can do a cost segregation study where an engineer comes on site, looks at all of the mechanics of the building, and sees how much of the total value should be allocated to each of those types of materials. And you take a bonus depreciation that first year, thereby getting, instead of 1/30th of the value each year, you get a larger lump sum. A lot of times you can see it between 40 and 60% of your investable dollars coming back as a negative loss on your K1 to help offset that capital gains exposure proceed you have. So it's all about making sure you have enough depreciation to offset capital gains.
Okay, gotcha. So we'll keep using our example of you bought this, you sold this property for 400,000. You have 300,000 in capital gains. You buy, let's say, into a syndication, or you buy a multifamily project, and you do a cost segregation study, and you can take out 40% depreciation in year one because of that cost segregation study with all the bonus depreciation. So that 40%, instead of getting, maybe $35,000 in depreciation in year one, and then needing to pay capital gains on the rest of that 300,000, on 265,000 of it, you might be able to wipe it all out because the year one depreciation might be $400,000. So it might even be more than the 300,000 that you're getting out of that property that you're selling. So we've talked a little bit about the idea of a syndication, and that's what Rise 48 does. So can you just give me the kind of opportunities that we have at Rise 48, and why somebody might transition from having physical properties that they own and manage over to something like Rise 48?
Yeah, I'll give you my personal example. So, my wife and I, we had a small portfolio of single family homes, duplexes, and Airbnbs, and we were getting to the point where managing, 5+ properties became cumbersome in the amount of time that it was taking finding tenants, keeping the properties, up to date and well kept, transitioning as different tenants would come and go, that we found like the time that we were spending felt like a second, third, fourth, and fifth jobs. So we wanted to buy back our time by spending less time actively managing these properties. And they were great because they were kicking out some monthly cash flow, and that was really happy. We were happy with that. The property values were increasing, which was also a good thing to have. But we were spending so much time that the total return on value just wasn't there for us. So we were looking for an opportunity to take the capital that we had tied up in those properties, sell them, and then roll them into an opportunity where it truly was passive. We commit our capital to a trusted operator who's going to execute a business plan and give us a nice size projected return. So that's what we chose to do, and why I think it could be helpful to our listeners is they might be in a similar situation where they were after some additional income, they wanted to put their capital to work, they wanted to diversify outside of Wall Street and have some physical assets. So they maybe bought a property, they listened to a podcast, they read a book, and they thought that was a wise thing to do. But then maybe they started having a family and they had more demands with children, and they didn't have as much time to give towards actively managing that property. So they, like me, transitioned over into a passive opportunity where I'm getting consistent cash flow paid monthly. I'm getting to share in the upside of the appreciation of that asset. And I'm getting one of the best parts of owning real estate, depreciation, and having some ability to offset um, income with that depreciation.
That's awesome, Nick. So, if you're looking to do kind of what you did, and let's say you want to do a 1031 exchange, or you would want to do a lazy 1031, what are the different minimum investment sizes with Rise 48?
Yeah, if we're doing a traditional 1031, we're typically looking to have someone come in with around 500K of investable dollars to put towards the syndication. And anything's negotiable, so book a call with someone on our team and we'll be able to talk you through it. But that's traditionally the amount that makes sense based on the costs that go into executing a 1031. And here at Rise 48, we've got members on staff that are trained to help walk through the process from start to finish. So my encouragement would just be click the link below and jump on a call, and myself or Jason or Jeremy or Zach would be happy to walk you through the process. For a lazy 1031, the minimum is just whatever the minimum is for that particular investment. So at Rise 48, currently our minimum investment is $50,000. But that might not always be the case down the road. I could see that increasing. But with a $50,000 investment, general rule of thumb, every situation is unique, but we're typically seeing around 40 to 60% of your investment coming back through depreciation as a negative loss on your K1. So if you were to make $100,000 investment, typically 40 to 60% of that would be able to be used as depreciation to offset any other passive gains that you have. So that's kind of where we start.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, Nick, you kind of mentioned it there, but if you want to learn more about this or anything Rise 48, what should somebody do?
Yeah, just go to our website, rise48equity.com, and click on the invest button, and you'll get an opportunity to jump on a call with myself or Jason or Jeremy or someone on our team to walk you through what is the process and what makes sense for your particular situation. I think a lot of people might have only heard of 1031 because they're getting ready to sell a property and they don't want to pay as much of taxes, as some people are having to pay. So they look into opportunities to pay less in taxes. And if you pay less in taxes, that means you have more money to invest, more money to steward, more money to do the things that you've been called to do.
Yeah, thanks so much for that, Nick. I think that really does it for this little lunch and learn on 1031 exchanges and the lazy 1031. So I really appreciate everybody joining us. And Nick, thank you for joining me for this
Yeah,
one.
it's great. Looking forward to the next one.
All righty, me too. Take care.